Today, working on 2007 Acura MDX with the J37 or 3.7 liter Honda / Acura engine. What we're doing here is we're doing a timing belt job, and there's plenty of videos out there on timing belt jobs, so I'm not going to make a whole video about timing belt jobs. But one thing that's a lot of times forgotten is oil pump reseal during the timing belt job. You're right there. It's a couple more bolts. It's a little bit more work, but you might as well do it. And on this one, and from what I understand, a lot of these V6 Honda motors, this oil pump, it can become a leaking issue. It's pretty common from what I understand. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna walk you through basically the oil pump reseal. For those of you who haven't watched my videos before, I try to do videos on things that aren't readily available already, kind of fill in that gap. So there's lots of videos on timing belts and how to do timing belts, but this video is going to be about the oil pump. So as you can see here, I've already removed the timing belt and everything, and this little guy right here is the oil filter housing, what the oil filter screws onto here. The exact name escapes me at the moment, but that is what goes right here. You will need this gasket. Best to probably buy these at the dealer. There's a special shaped gasket here and a special shaped gasket that goes behind the oil pump up here. The rest of it is basically silicone. You can use Honda Bond if you really want to. RVT, just some sort of anaerobic sealant will work. Now, unfortunately, to do this job on this engine, as you can kind of tell here, it's actually mounted not only around the edges, but to the oil pan. You'll want to also buy the O-ring that I'll show you in a little bit, the O-ring that secures that the tube that sucks the oil up into the oil pump here. There's a little O-ring that attaches it to the bottom on the inside of that oil pan, and you'll want to replace that as well. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to actually drop this oil pan off this motor so that we can get the oil pump off and reseal it. So essentially, by the time this motor's done, it's going to have a new water pump, new timing belt, the oil pump's going to be resealed, the pan gasket's going to be resealed, it's going to have a new crank seal, and while you're at it, you might as well replace the cam seals. So it's going to have basically a whole front end reseal and timing job done on it. So it's going to be good to go for a long time. It's not that much more work. Like I said, once you're here, you might as well do it. So I just want to kind of show you what it looks like with everything off. We've taken our timing belt, our sprockets, we've taken our sensors, our crank shaft position sensor off. That oil filter housing is off. So next thing is we're just going to have to take this oil pan off. In order to do it, we're going to have to disconnect the exhaust at the catalytic converters on either side, and a little bit farther back in there's a joint we'll disconnect just to kind of get that exhaust out of the way, and I'll kind of show you from the underside. Alright, so we went ahead and dropped the exhaust. I just unbolted it where it attaches to those catalytic converters, just up on top, and then I just disconnected the hangers down there, so it's just kind of hanging down. I put it on a block of wood, and that allowed me to get the oil pan off. Pretty self-explanatory. Just undo the bolts. There's some bigger bolts that hold it to the bell housing here, and there's two bolts that hide underneath the see those two right there, they hide underneath the flex plate cover, so you got to take the little flex plate cover off to get those last two, after which there's a pickup tube that goes here. in this hole. It's attached here and here and here, 3 bolts. You'll take that off, and now you can kind of see that seam there for the oil pump. So now we should be able to take that oil pump off from the front. Should separate, and we can get it resealed. Alright, here's our oil pump. So as you can see, it's siliconed, or RVT, Honda Bond, whatever you want to call it, kind of around this edge. And then you've got this oddly shaped O-ring here. This is usually the point of failure on these guys. While you're at it, you're going to be replacing this, the crank seal, and this little O-ring right here for that pickup tube. So that's what it looks like off. Let me show you inside here, so you can see kind of where all those O-rings and gaskets fit. You've got your dipstick that comes down through here. Obviously what we're going to do is make sure we clean up all this, excess silicone, clean it up real good. We're going to just replace those gaskets, redo the silicone, put it back on, and then I like to put the crank seal on last. And then just the opposite of removal with the oil pan. We're going to clean that up, put some new silicone on it, put it back up, and then we can get back to our timing job. And our water pump's next, right there, sitting right above it. So, alright, get those surfaces all cleaned up, ready for some new silicone. Just make sure you don't leave any debris behind. Be real careful. If you're going to use a little bit of brake clean, try to keep it localized to your surfaces so it doesn't get down into the bottom end of that motor or anything like that. Got this all cleaned up as well. So now we're basically going to place the gasket here. We're going to do a real light bead of silicone around the edge of this. You've got to be real careful not to overdo it or underdo it. So you got to find that perfect medium. What I like to do is put a little bead on and then just kind of smooth it with my finger, but not hard. If you put too much on, when you tighten it down, it will squeeze out and glob, and it can cause issues if a piece breaks off and gets sucked into your oil system. If you put too little, it'll leak. So it's just a light skiff. Make sure that you cover all the metal with it, that it's enough that when you tighten it down, it will squeeze out and cover that surface. And we'll put it back on. Got our oil pump reinstalled, got a new crank seal put back in, got our oil filter housing put back on with a new gasket, screen gasket, and we're on our way. Alright, we got our gasket mounting surface all cleaned up. Sure, get all the silicone off of it. Got our pickup tube reinstalled with the new O-ring. Clean all the way around. Make sure to clean up after yourself. Don't leave any debris or anything. And we're gonna put some silicone or Honda Bond on that oil pan that we've also cleaned up. You got this oil pan all cleaned up. You could probably clean it a little better than that. I made sure that I kind of cleaned out some of that debris and caked on oil. Clean up around the edge. And we're going to put silicone on that, reinstall it, torque it down.